When betrayal hits, it can feel like the world is falling apart. The person you trusted, the one you shared your life with, betrays you in ways that seem unimaginable. But what if that pain could also be the beginning of something new? A chance to rebuild, redefine, and rediscover your purpose. That's the journey I found myself on after Karen's betrayal. A journey that led me far from the life I knew, to a place where I not only found healing, but also a life I never expected. The phone call ended abruptly, my hand gripping the receiver tightly as I stood in the middle of my living room, staring blankly at the wall. Karen's voice, still ringing in my ears, was filled with emotions, tears, guilt, and frustration. But I had no sympathy left for her. She had crossed a line that I couldn't unsee, couldn't forgive. She had betrayed me. Not just once, but in ways I never thought possible. The person I had given my heart to, the woman I had loved, had conspired with Frank, a close friend no less, to tear apart everything we had built. The pain of the betrayal hit me like a physical blow, but I didn't flinch. I had no energy left to argue, to explain, or even to feel sorrow for what was once my life. She cried, she pleaded, but I was done. No more excuses, no more apologies. What she had done carried too much weight, and there was no turning back. I was finished. After the call, everything felt different. The apartment that once felt like home now seemed like a prison, filled with reminders of a life that was no longer mine. The house we had shared, the life we had built together. It was all shattered. Gone. But I couldn't stay there, unable to stand the memories that crept up on me. I needed a change, a clean break. I found an apartment in an older building, simple and comfortable, with 2 bedrooms and just the right amount of space. It was a modest place, but it was mine. It wasn't far from the office, which was a relief. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could use the walk to clear my head each day. At first, I considered it a temporary arrangement, a place to regroup, to think. But then something unexpected happened. The more I settled in, the more I realized I didn't want to go back to the old life. I didn't want the heavy responsibilities that came with owning a house, the constant upkeep. I didn't need the stress anymore. What I needed was simplicity. The thought of a small coastal cottage popped into my mind, but then it evolved. Why stop at a cottage? Why not get a boat? A boat I could keep docked in the harbor, a perfect seaside retreat. My mind wandered, imagining sailing on calm waters, the wind in my hair, a life completely different from the one I had left behind. It was the early fall when everything began to take shape. I was adjusting to the solitude of the apartment, but it was far from lonely. I actually started spending more time with my daughters now than when I lived in Raleigh. Every month, they'd come for a weekend, bringing along friends, and my apartment would buzz with energy. It was an explosion of laughter, activity, and warmth. A stark contrast to the silence that filled the apartment when they weren't there. During those 36 hours, I'd treat them to dinner, watch movies, and just enjoy their company. They'd leave, and I'd be left alone again in the quiet. But even though I craved that peace, I missed them immediately after they left. It was a bittersweet feeling, a reminder of the love I still had for them, even as my life continued to change. To my surprise, a few of my old friends came to visit as well. The rest of them had promised to come when the weather was better. I wasn't completely isolated. In fact, I'd started to build new friendships. Work became a place for connection, and I found myself getting involved in activities outside of the office. The sailing community was particularly welcoming. I met new people, some of them intriguing women, but I made it clear to myself that I wouldn't get involved with anyone until the divorce was finalized. It was important to stay respectful, to remain focused on my healing before trying to move forward in other ways. But even though I was trying to build a new life, Karen didn't give up on reaching out. The messages, the calls, they kept coming. She never truly repented for what she had done. She didn't understand the depth of the pain she had caused. Instead, she downplayed it, rationalizing her actions by saying, "Everyone does it. It doesn't mean anything." To her, it was just a mistake, an error in judgment. But I knew better. The intimacy we had shared, the trust that had been broken, it mattered. The deceit mattered. And it was the manipulation that hurt even more. I thought about confronting her, explaining the depth of my feelings, how what she had done wasn't something that could just be brushed aside. But I realized something. People change, and I no longer needed to invest energy in explaining things to her. She wasn't the same woman I had once loved, and I wasn't the same man who had stood by her side all those years. There was no complete detachment, of course. With 2 daughters and many mutual friends, it was impossible to completely sever ties. But with 600 miles between us, I no longer felt the sting of daily rejection. I no longer had to face betrayal every day. I had reclaimed my life. I was forging my own path, creating my own future. And there were positives emerging from the wreckage of my past. I had found joy in living alone, the simplicity of it, the ability to make decisions without consulting anyone else. It was freeing. It wasn't without its challenges, of course. The winters up here were colder, darker, but I found ways to cope. The darkness of winter seemed to make indoor gatherings more cozy and warm. I started to embrace the rhythm of the seasons, the quiet moments, and the joy of having a life that was just mine. I wasn't lonely, not really. The people I met, friends from work, from the sailing community, brought new energy into my life. I was no longer defined by my past. The search for a boat became my new project. I found a marina not far from town with moorings available, and I began making plans for the spring, when I could start sailing. I was looking forward to learning new skills, splicing lines, applying varnish, and mastering the art of sailing. The prospect of spending my weekends on the water felt like a dream come true. The local restaurants were a treat, with microbreweries serving up some of the best beers I'd ever tasted. The people here were real, authentic, and I felt a sense of belonging that I hadn't felt in years. The community was vibrant, filled with life, music, and even contra dancing, something I had never imagined myself doing. But there was something about it, the rhythm, the movement, that was captivating. I was still discovering new surprises every day, and I had a sense that life was beginning to turn around. For the first time in years, I felt excited about the future. I wasn't fully healed yet. There were still days when the past came rushing back, but time had a way of softening the edges of the hurt. I had hope again. As for Karen and Frank, their story didn't end as they had imagined. Frank's wife, who had once stood by him, decided she had had enough. She kicked him out of the house and divorced him. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I was rebuilding my life, they were dealing with the consequences of their actions. And as for Karen, well, despite everything, she still tried to reach out. But it didn't matter anymore. I had moved on. I had found my way back to happiness, and I was no longer tied to the pain of the past. Life, I've come to realize, doesn't always go the way we expect it to. Sometimes it's the hardest moments, the ones that tear us apart, that make way for something new. My journey wasn't easy, but with each passing day, I found healing. And with each choice I made, I created a life that was entirely my own. I no longer live in the shadow of betrayal. I am forging a new path, and while I may not be fully healed, I am confident that the future is brighter than I ever imagined. Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize what truly matters. And for me, it was the chance to rebuild, to rediscover, and to reclaim my life one step at a time.